Hello, I'm your coach, Brian Mitchell, and today we'll be talking about carbohydrates. Carbohydrates are primarily used for energy that is required when we perform higher intensity activities like our weekly exercises. So what exactly is a carbohydrate? Carbohydrates are conglomerations of sugar, fiber, and starch and act as our primary source of sugar, specifically glucose, in the body. Carbohydrates are classified into simple carbs and complex carbs. A simple carb is a carb that is mostly sugar, and a complex carb is made up of less sugar and more fiber and starch. Simple carbs are found in more processed foods like cookies, cakes, and cereal. Complex carbs, the ones we want, are found in foods like whole grains and vegetables. After we eat them, carbs are digested and absorbed through the intestines and passed into the bloodstream. It's at this point that they pass their sugar molecules to our bloodstream. The sugar in our blood is then transported to muscle cells to be used as fuel. In order for us to get the sugar into our cells, we rely on a hormone called insulin. Insulin binds to the sugar in the bloodstream and carries it to our cell membranes, where receptors pick up that sugar and allow it into the cell. Now, mitochondria are organelles inside the cell where we burn fat. To burn fat, we need to get the fat not only inside the cell, but then inside the mitochondria as well, and we also have to have oxygen present for the process. The reason I mention this is because we can burn the sugar from carbs outside the mitochondria without oxygen present, and this makes carbs an easier source of energy for cells. This is where metabolic flexibility comes in. Metabolic flexibility is the ability to burn appropriate fuel sources in the appropriate circumstances. Carbs produce less energy than fat gram per gram, but because they are a quicker and more convenient source of energy, our bodies will prioritize them. If we eat a high-carb diet, we encourage this lazy energy production, and the result is that the mitochondria within our cells decrease in number. Our bodies are efficient to a fault. The mitochondria shut down because there is no work for them to do anymore, and keeping them active is a waste of our body's energy. We also see a reduction in the enzymes that drive the fat-burning process. This is all an example of reduced metabolic flexibility. If carbs are always available for consumption, the body will favor those carbs and deprogram itself from burning fat. What would happen if your body grew carb dependent like this and then one day you couldn't get any carbs? What if you end up missing a meal or skipping breakfast or being stuck somewhere with no food for a long period of time? You would start getting really hungry and angry too, because your blood sugar is dropping and you're so used to having food readily available to fix it. You might also start to feel lightheaded and low in energy. With a healthy metabolic flexibility, you would be able to utilize sugars appropriately during high-intensity exercise, and if you miss a meal, it won't be the end of the world, because you are then able to tap into and burn stored fats in your system so that your energy levels continue. You'd be able to exercise and skip meals without going crazy. It would make sense then that as you increase your metabolic flexibility, you improve your ability to lose weight. You can increase your metabolic flexibility by exercising, by eating a better quality diet like we discuss in the food quality module, by getting a better quantity and quality of sleep, and by reducing stress like we'll discuss in the stress module. In a cell that is healthy, there will be many insulin receptors, and when an insulin molecule with bonded sugar passes by, the cell will make sure to consume that sugar. In a cell that is unhealthy, there will be few insulin receptors, and it's less likely that the sugar will get into that cell. So if you've got a high amount of sugar constantly available in the bloodstream because of the diet you've been eating, your cells will adapt to the constant presence of sugar and close down many of the insulin receptors because they don't need them. Now, if you have a lower carb diet, your cells will adapt accordingly and put out more insulin receptors to make sure the more limited amounts of sugar in the bloodstream are consumed. This is what we call insulin sensitivity. The lower the amount of carbs in the diet, the higher the sensitivity for our cells to pick up the sugar from those carbs. The higher the amount of carbs in the diet, the lower the sensitivity for our cells to pick up that sugar. We need to strive to lower the amount of carbs in our diet and consume higher quality carbs so that we can have a higher insulin sensitivity. Low insulin sensitivity leads to pain and unwanted conditions. If our sugar levels consistently become too high, we will begin to show symptoms of diabetes. We need to do something with this excess sugar and the body being an efficient machine, has a plan for that. Our muscle cells and liver can take about 3/4 of a pound of this excess sugar from the bloodstream and store it. Once our muscle stores get topped off and we fill the liver then needs to start creating more space for new sugar molecules to come in. To create this space, the liver begins converting our sugar molecules into fat, and these fat molecules get pushed aside to be stored in the places that we least want them, like our belly and underarms. This is a normal process that happens every day. We will always store a little sugar in our liver, and we will always convert a little of that sugar into fat. But have no fear, a healthy individual will break down their fat stores to supply energy to the different bodily processes, like the immune system and the detox system, that happen overnight while they sleep. But what happens if our carb consumption is so high that these fat cells start to grow, and overnight they're not shrinking back down to normal again, but are continuing to grow? Eventually, they'll grow to the point that they crowd each other a little bit. This crowding will trigger an inflammatory response, and inflammation sends signals to our cells to change how they receive sugar. When the body goes into a state of inflammation, it wants to be insulin resistant, because inflammation is an immune response. When the immune system is active, your body prioritizes it, and it will try to keep all of the energy for itself. It's a vicious cycle. The inflammation, which is at the end of the line, has negative effects on eating, which is at the beginning of the line. A healthy insulin pathway starts with the consumption of a meal. We eat, the sugar hits our bloodstream, and then insulin production begins, and this insulin tells the brain to signal us to stop eating. But when we become insulin resistant, we struggle to stop eating when we feel full. We lack those healthy signals produced by the brain when the insulin is released. We start to see symptoms like central weight gain, mental dependence on carbs, being inappropriately moody, having low energy or low motivation, and feeling dizzy or lightheaded after exercising. We see skin conditions like acne, eczema, skin tags, or psoriasis, autoimmune diseases, gout, sleep apnea, the inability to build muscle mass. We also might get what is called reward deficiency syndrome. Someone who is insulin resistant might search for satisfaction by continuing to eat well beyond the point of being full, or the search may manifest in other aspects of life, like going shopping and over-purchasing, always having to buy new things, or never feeling satisfied in relationships, jumping from partner to partner, or perhaps even through addictive behaviors like drug or alcohol abuse. Problems that begin with the overconsumption of carbohydrates can actually create problems in all aspects of our life. But don't worry, it stops now. I have great news. Your body is an amazing machine, and if you begin to tell it to improve, it will listen and, with your consistency, will begin to repair and reprogram itself. Let's look at some solutions for restoring insulin sensitivity and promoting weight loss. First, we should strive to control carb consumption and the quality of carbs being consumed. When there's less sugar in the bloodstream because we're consuming better quality carbs, our cells will start to produce more insulin receptors to use all the energy available. If our cells have more receptors, we will get more sugar molecules into the cell, which means less excess sugar in the bloodstream needing to be mopped up by the liver. Second, we need to think about timing. How often do we eat? In what window of time across the day do we eat? In terms of meal frequency, we want to eat and get the right amount of nutrients and calories by portioning according to our individualized plans. If we're not snacking and continuously putting stress on our digestive systems, then we're giving our gut the occasional break. If the foods we were eating were causing any inflammation, we're reducing that during our breaks in between meals. Third, let's look at the concept of time-limited feeding. A majority of human evolution took place while there were few of us and we were living around the equator where our night-to-day ratio was an almost perfect 12-hour split. You will find that if we strive to eat within a window of 12 hours and rest our digestive systems over the other 12 hours of each day, that our insulin resistance will reduce and our metabolic flexibility will increase. So if we wake up and eat breakfast at 7 a.m., we should try to have dinner by 7 p.m. Fourth, we need to look at our activity levels. Exercise increases our insulin sensitivity. Specifically, exercise higher in resistance and intensity, like weight routines. As we exercise, our cells will consume energy using the sugar in the bloodstream introduced from the carbs we ate. And with less sugar remaining in the bloodstream, we will be putting less stress on our livers, allowing them to perform the other tasks that they were intended for. Now, these 4 points are major lifestyle changes. If you find yourself needing improvement in multiple categories, just work on one at a time. Don't try to do too much at once only to burn out. This is about creating habits to ensure a lasting change, which will contribute to your vision. Don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. Be good enough. Keep improving every day, and you'll eventually get where you need to be. Get excited. Take massive action. Improve your carb consumption and get ready for the next module.